The Producer Podcast is back in development as I'm sitting down with producers Andrew Teravskis and Adam Gregory from Noble Story Co. to talk about their film journey, Noble Story Co., and developing film projects. So without further ado, let's get started. So thank you both very much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Micah. It's great to be
Thanks,
here.
thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
So I thought I'd maybe let you two rock, paper, scissors over this, but maybe take a few minutes just to kind of introduce yourselves and how you got started as working on like producing film projects and that.
Rock, paper, scissors.
I think I'll say this. It started when Andrew bought me a hamburger from Disney World, like one of those like $20 hamburgers.
Okay.
He went straight for the heart of the issue.
Ever since then, we have bonded over food and film.
Yeah, half of the food Andrew cook. Andrew's a really good cook,
Mm-hmm.
and half of the food he makes or talks about him making, I'm like, what is that? I'm like the Midwest boy that grew up on the farm, like potatoes, steak and potatoes. That's all I know. And Andrew's opening my world, both in the film sense and the food sense. So it's pretty cool.
there's this, there's this incredible meat called fish.
I do live in Michigan, and I am surrounded by the Great Lakes, the largest freshwater system on the planet, but I didn't grow up eating fish. So not a lot of fish. I grew up fishing. My dad ate fish, but and I guess how Andrew and I met, we met at a conference 7-8 years ago. And yeah, just kind of hit it off, just kind of spent a couple years, hanging, talking on the phone. I live in Michigan. Andrew lives out in California. And so we just kind of struck up the long distance relationship there, I guess. And then got into making some short films together, and then partnered up and did a limited series, and then launched Noble Story Co. March of 2020 to much fanfare as the world shut down. But yeah, Andrew, I'll let you kind of take it from here.
Yeah, so I mean, how far back do you want to go back farther than that?
I don't
So
know.
when I was 10, no, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, actually, that is kind of pertinent because a lot of the reason why that I'm in film is because when I was 10 or 11, somewhere in that age, my mom went on a women's retreat or something like that. And my dad said, "All right, I got a movie for you." Yeah. I
This is how it
don't think my
always
mom knew about this. Uh, and he showed me Raiders of the Lost Ark. It gave me, it terrified me, the whole exploding head scene and melting faces and all of that. I had nightmares. But I think what captivated me about that movie is, weeks after seeing that movie, I could still visually replay the entire film in my head. And that was the first time I had experienced that, seeing a movie that was so well crafted that I could remember it visually so strongly. And that really intrigued me. And I didn't know what a director did. I didn't know what I didn't know what any of the filmmakers did or who was responsible for creating that vision in my mind's eye. But I started, trying to recreate the feelings that I had while watching Raiders. So, like most kids who've seen Indiana Jones, we made all the Indiana Jones spoofs in my backyard and, um, all of that sort of thing, was obsessed with Indiana Jones. And to this day, it still is one of my favorite movies. But I think a lot of the reason why I pursued filmmaking was because of that encounter with this very well told story. So fast forward, yeah, met Adam at a conference, went to Disneyland, bought him a burger, and haven't been able to get rid of him since.
Yeah.
Uh,
Loyal, loyal to the end.
I think like the backstory to that story is, Adam and I did what probably a lot of uh independent film producers, up and coming film producers do. You start working where the money is, which is in most cases the commercial and industrial industries.
Mm-hmm.
So producing films for companies, for product demonstrations, doing commercials, doing online videos, all of this stuff. We joke that we'd probably still get paid a lot better if we were still doing that.
Yeah, probably. If I put the same amount of effort into corporate work as I have
yeah.
into film.
But around the time that Adam and I met, we had both kind of reached the glass ceiling of each of our respective industries. I shot I got to the point where the movie, I was shooting a promo on film, like actual film. So I'm like, you know what? I don't think we could go much higher than this. And Adam, was doing stuff with all these huge companies, in Grand Rapids. That's the home base for Amway and the DeVos family. And we were both doing things at the top level, kind of looking around saying, all right, well, that's that. Now what? And we both were struck by this need to do something that was additive to the world, because I think both Adam and I felt that the world is full of noise, and we were fearful that we were just adding more noise to the world by producing more content that people aren't going to watch, or it's all the stuff that you skip on YouTube to get to the video that you actually want to see, right? Yeah. So we wanted to do something that was additive. And like many other film producers, all right, let's get into narrative movie making. Cool. We go to this conference.
Easy.
Yeah, it's both Adam and I separately, we didn't know each other when we showed up. We started pounding business cards. Hey, give me my big break. I've done all this stuff for all these companies you've never heard of, or maybe you have. Like 5 words to somebody. We're like handing out, yeah. We're handing out business cards like Monopoly money. Yeah. And nobody paid any attention to us. But we met each other as like, the business card competitors. And and I think like all these years later, even though we didn't get our big break out of that conference, what we really needed to do was to meet each other and to say, okay, nobody's going to give us the opportunity to get our big break. You kind of have to make your opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest things that Adam and I realized is in all of these conferences, you have to do it yourself. If you want to be in film, you kind of just have to get out from behind your desk and like actually make a movie or start a business, or you have to work towards your dream. It's not just going to fall into your lap. And so the ensuing time since Adam and I met has been just that, us working to build that dream in one way or another, whether it's producing projects together, starting businesses together, doing investor pitches together. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We learned a heck of a lot more about pitching to investors than I ever wanted to learn.
Yeah, I think that what Andrew just said is honestly, if people only take that away from this podcast, it's very important. You really have to it's who you know and all that, but you really have to make your own way if you want to be in it. You really have to go for it.
Yeah. So Adam and I are Christians, and one of the things, I'm just going to clear this up a little bit. Noble, we're very intentional in not branding Noble as a Christian film production company. We want to have a lot broader reach than just the Christian film audience. But Adam and I are strong believers, and that drives many of the decisions that we make as a company. And one of the things that I wanted to say is, during this process and keeping with the whole, you kind of have to make your opportunity. The way that Adam and I have seen God open doors for our company has always been when we're moving and knocking on doors. And it's not, there have been so many things that have happened that could not have been created by us. Like, there's so many opportunities that have arisen that are not our doing. There's no way that we could have orchestrated that. For instance, a story that I like to tell, one of our largest investors in our company invested in us because he happened to visit a friend of his who was investing in us.
Yeah.
And
Well, it was like signing the
yeah,
document.
he was like signing a document, and the conversation was, "Oh, what are you signing?" "Oh, well, a couple buddies of mine are starting a company together, and I thought I thought I'd invest a little bit of money." And he invested some money, but it wasn't a lot. And this other guy comes in and says, "Okay, well, that's great. I think I'll invest in them." We never met him. And it was one of those things like, I can't do that
Yeah.
again if you asked me to. That was God providing for our company. But in order for that to have happened, we had to get off the couch and go talk to the other guy first and tell him about our company and do all of the business work to make sure that we can take investments and that we have a business plan that's worth investing in. Like, we still had to move, and then God provides. And so, as in keeping with, don't wait for your dream to fall in your lap, go and do it. Don't wait for God's perfect will and everything to fall in your lap. Focus on, pursuing a relationship with God, and get off the couch and go do something. And then watch and see where God is moving, and then go where God is moving. And that's where you're going to find success. So anyways, that's all right. I don't think we got off topic a little bit, but
No, that's really good.
I don't know what to say. That was epic. That was awesome.
Yeah, I guess maybe let's jump in to looking at kind of development, and maybe starting with like, how do you even figure out, like, is this story worth developing? Because I know I've had plenty of people reach out to me like, I have this script idea, or I have this story from my own real life that I think would be perfect for a movie, and I hear it and I'm like, I don't really want to give up 5 years of my life to bring that to the silver screen. So how do you make that decision? What are you guys looking at with your company to figure that out?
well, that's a great question, Micah, and I think that's a question that not a lot of people really understand or think through all of the different components of that, because in many ways what you're asking is, what story deserves to be a movie, right? And like you hinted at, there's a lot of people we've had, as you can imagine, we've had countless people come and say, "Oh, my story needs to be a movie," or "My friend's story needs to be a movie." And on a gut level, you hear the story, you're like, yeah, that's not a movie. That's a great story, like, not taking away from your story, but that's not a movie.
Yeah.
And kind of what you're asking is, what's the difference between, okay, that's a great story, and all right, yeah, that's a great movie? Because movies are a very specific format, and it's a very specific type of storytelling, and not every story is a perfect fit to the format of a film. So how we consider a story for adding to our slate, there's a few things that we do. Number one, like right off the bat, we have some very general content mandates and things that we're interested in considering. And that just kind of helps weed out some of the noise, because like I said, we get people from all over the place who are telling us, about their stories and sending us scripts and all that sort of thing. And you have to have a system to kind of weed out, the 99 bad ideas from the one good idea, or more like the 999,000 or 999 bad ideas from the one good idea. That's more the ratio that we found. So we have three main content mandates. The first one, in keeping with our name, Noble Story Co., we're looking for stories which reflect truth, depict what is right, do not defile, and pursue excellence. And that's kind of a paraphrase of Philippians 4:8, which is one of the guiding principles of our company and one of the sources of our name, Noble Story Co. So another way that we like to phrase it is stories which honor that which is good, true, and beautiful. It's kind of a old, dating back to, some say back to Socrates and the three transcendentals of goodness, truth, and beauty. That's kind of like the main threshold that we look at, and that weeds out a lot of the noise, right away. If you're looking at a drama which is very dark, there's no redeeming qualities to it. It just doesn't fit in our brand, doesn't fit in our content mandate. So it's easy to just say, no, this doesn't match with what we're doing. I don't even need to consider if the story is strong or not. It just doesn't match from a branding level. Another one of our content mandates is we choose stories that are based on underlying IP, such as books, life stories, real events, or pre-existing creative materials. It doesn't have to be a true story. It can be a webcomic, for instance, something that already has a pre-existing IP underneath it. And there's some business reasons, and I'll get into that in a minute. And number 3, this is a new content mandate for us, but we're very interested in looking for franchisable stories. We don't have any on our slate at the moment. This is for new acquisitions that we're looking for. So I just think from a strategic perspective, making a movie is so hard to do. And if you can find a movie idea that you can get off the ground and it demonstrates success, like business and financial success, and you can continue to reap from that success with a spinoff or a sequel or something, it's a lot better, more strategic of a business decision. So that's what we're looking for. So those are our 3 content mandates. Like I said, that kind of helps us weed out the noise. And right away, if somebody says, hey, I've got this book I want you to consider, I can say, okay, well, that meets content mandate number 2. It's based on a pre-existing IP. I'm conceptually interested. What's the story about? Oh, it's about, it's a true story of German submarines in the Gulf of Mexico during World War II. And it's got this incredible theme of forgiveness and second chances. Oh, all right. Well, that meets our number 1, noble stories that reflect what is good, true, and beautiful. Cool. I'm interested. Now I'll read the book and I'll see if creatively, if it's something that we resonate with. And that's the second, how we decide if a story is worth pursuing. Is it a good story? Is it a strong story? Is there catharsis there? How do we emotionally respond to the story? Is it structured as a movie, or are we going to have to basically gut the story and restructure it for it to even work in a film? Does it have, and by that I mean, like, does it have all the plot points of a movie? Is there like a clear inciting incident, a good midpoint, and a good, what I call the all is lost point? So are there clear story points that you can kind of hang the thread of the story on? And so once we look at that, like, and the book that I was just mentioning is actually on our slate. It's called The Heartmender. We read the book, and not only did it pass our content mandates, but we're like, oh, wow, this is a very strongly structured story. It fits with a film structure. We ended up turning it into a limited series, which is basically just a long movie, but it fits very well into that film structure. And so we decided, okay, we really like this story. There's a lot of emotional catharsis there. It got us off the couch, and we decided to move forward with the story. And then there's like, kind of as I was hinting there at the end, there is a gut level response that Adam and I really pay attention to when we're considering stories. This only comes in once it's past every once it's past all of the other points. Like if it looks like a good fit for us, Adam and I have a honest conversation with each other. Do we have this, like, does this story actually get us off the couch? Does this move the needle for us? Are we excited to tell this story? And it's important for us, and we've learned the hard way, to be very honest with each other, because there's some ideas which, from a business perspective or from a story perspective, you're like, conceptually, yeah, that would be a great movie. But if I'm being really honest with myself, that's not a movie that I want to make. Or sometimes, a lot more rarely, it's the flip side. That's a movie that I want to make, but if I'm being really honest with myself, the story isn't there and the business aspect isn't there. So that's kind of the big consideration. We also consider business things such as, does the story have, what is the size of the audience around the story? You know, for a book, how big is the author's audience? What is the, for this genre and for this type of story, what is the typical audience for that? You know, so we want to be a profitable company. So we're not interested in making a bunch of passion projects or art house films, which really have to fight uphill to get an audience. We want stories that are readily assimilated into the film audience. So does that, I feel like I talked for a long time on that question. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially kind of how you were putting the whole, because like with franchises and trying to make, and how those are more sustainable. Because nowadays you just hear so many people talking about franchises because like everybody's doing it, and it seems like some companies are literally doing it just so that they can join the franchise crowd, you know. But like hearing that there's, you know, this is our business reason behind why we want to pursue this instead makes a lot of sense.
I mean, not to get off on a hot button issue, but it's smart from a business perspective. Think about Star Wars. You know, Star Wars movies as of late are garbage, but I still watch them because they're Star Wars. And that's just a smart business decision. It would be even smarter if they actually made good movies.
Yes.
But, you know, it's, with a franchise, to some extent, it's kind of free money. Now, we don't, you know, Star Wars is obviously one of the largest IPs in the world. So to some extent, it's a little bit different for what we're talking about. Well, actually, to a large extent, it's very different. But still, some of the core tenets are the same. Think about a more maybe Noble Story Co. sized franchise, which would be the Enola Holmes franchise on Netflix. That's the type of story that we're looking for. They're very modestly budgeted movies. There's a lot of potential for sequels, and they have immense audience reaction. And if we can find a story that has that potential to be franchisable, then great. You know, makes a lot of sense.
I am curious a little bit more, like with the franchise stuff. Like how much with you are you for your Noble Story Code? Are you mainly looking at like the potential for sequels and spin-offs, or are you also looking at like the merchandising aspect that, you know, you see franchises like Star Wars and that doing?
I mean, all of the above. I mean, we are a film company, so we're most concerned about the show or movies first, but definitely, you know, if there is merchandising, yes, that's a bonus. But I think it doesn't, to be franchisable, it doesn't just have to be a show. It can be multiple movies. There can be a series. I mean, we saw that with Star Wars. They started with movies, and then they went to shows, and then they still do movies. It's movies are honestly easier than shows, so I wouldn't mind a franchise that could do some movies for, you know, out of the gate. But we're open to all of the above if it's the right fit. fit for mandates.
Yeah, not every franchise is easily merchandisable. Like if you think about go back to our Heartmender story, like what are we going to sell for merchandise? Like Nazi plush
Nazi,
dolls or something like
yeah,
that. Like,
Nazi,
it
Nazi
doesn't,
pins.
yeah, it doesn't make sense to be franchised. Um, and also that story isn't a franchise because it's very contained. And when I say franchise, it can be I might be bending the definition of the word a little bit, but it's basically a story that reaches farther than just the one iteration or the first iteration.
Okay.
So with the Heartmender, like it's really a self-contained story. After the story ends, we're done. There's not much more to talk about because we covered all the big stuff. Like, what are we going to do? Go back and do the childhood of the main characters? Like, nobody cares about that.
Mhm.
On another hand, like, okay, this isn't a franchise, but our show, Hope Medical, it's a medical show. There's so much potential to tell a complete dramatic arc in one season and then continue that for the next season in a totally different location, with the same characters, some different characters.
Yes.
There's a lot of potential for that story to go beyond just one season.
Right.
Or if in some alternate universe it was a movie, there's a lot potential to make a sequel to that, or even a threequel after that. So and
Isn't a threequel a trilogy?
yeah.
It's a medical word. I love it.
Threequel is kind of a yeah, I've been hearing that a lot recently.
Prequel. Now it's
Yeah, and like there's a so there's a book series that we are looking at that would make it good. There's 3 books in the main story that we've been looking at that would make a good franchise. It's a MG/YA novel. I'm trying not to be too specific, or novel series, and it's very similar to the Millie Bobby Brown and Enola Holmes series. Like I think the budget is very similar, and I really like those show ideas, and I like the franchisability of that. And so that's looking at the underlying property and seeing, oh, there's 3 novels here. Okay, well, the first novel would be a movie, the second novel would be a movie, the third novel would be a movie. Like there's potential for this to be more than just one installment. And if you're going to put in all that effort of getting a movie sold, it's nice to be able to say, hey, if audience really respond to this, there's 2 more just like this, and they might be better than this. There's a lot of, from a business perspective, that makes a lot of sense.
Maybe like continuing on, like once say a project's come to you guys and it's past your kind of criteria to be accepted as like a project for Noble Story Co. How do you decide like what format? If I remember right, I think even like your Heartmender project, didn't that start out, you were thinking it'd be a feature film and now you're going more limited series with that?
Yeah, honestly, that one's tricky. I think there might even still be some debate on that one, even though we are going as a limited series right now, and we have 6 scripts right now. That property, before it came to us, there had been a couple attempts at a feature as far as scripts go. And so we acquired the rights to the book and all the previous scripts. And kind of in looking at those and looking at the book and the opportunity at the time for distribution was pushing for a limited series. So I think that one was kind of a bit of a business decision mixed with looking at what had previously tried to be done and put on the page and realizing that the future wasn't capturing the entirety of the story. Both those scripts weren't working in the way they needed to be. It was cutting out a lot of things that we loved about the project. could we take the 6 scripts and cram them into a 3-hour movie? Sure. Um, maybe a distributor will tell us to do that. I'm not, I'm not sure. That one's a funny one for us because it does have a very, strong inciting incident. It has a very clear end. But limited series are really popular, and we thought let's go down that road because there's so much content here that we can really fill that time well and not just have a bunch of we're not adding just like tons of random things just to fill the time.
Yeah, I got a lot to add to that.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, there's a big consideration because when you're looking at a feature, think about all the outlet opportunities that you have for that. You can go the independent route where you get investors to finance the movie. You can go the fully independent route where you don't engage with a distributor and you get investors to come on board and you do the film festival circuit. And then you hopefully sell it at a festival, right? There's that fully independent route. There's also the studio independent hybrid route, which is where you go after investors and distributors at the same time, and you get what's called like a minimum guarantee deal or a negative pickup deal. And you finance the movie yourself, you retain creative control, and then the studio picks it up and pays for it when it's done. You have the studio route where you sell the movie to the studio and the studio finances it and they kind of basically take it off your hands. You might be attached to produce, but it becomes a studio picture. Then there's the streamer route where you could take it to a streamer like Netflix or any of the other major streamers and say, hey, do you guys want to do an original series? This would be very similar to the studio route, except depending on how known you are, the streamer may give you a little bit more to do with your story, or they might just take it off your hands. If you're doing a series of any fashion, you have one option: to take it to a streamer or to a network, which are kind of the same thing. You can't finance it independently. Independent series financing does not exist. Nobody will buy a pilot that you've shot and financed yourself. Mm-hmm. There is no theatrical model. You basically have one option. So from a business perspective, if we're looking at, the Heartmender, there was some potential for a series distribution, which is why we decided to adapt it into a limited series. But as producers, if you're looking at a story, don't you want to go with the option that says, all right, this gives me the most exit strategies. Let's go here. Because at the end of the day, if all the major studios pass on getting involved in your project, you still believe in it, and an investor comes along that believes in it, you still have a shot at making your movie. With a limited series or a series like an episodic, if the networks and streamers pass on your project, what are you going to do? I guess you could go to Angel and sell it to the crowd if there's enough people that like it. Mm-hmm. But that might be okay. Maybe there's 1.5 options because Angel is a studio / streamer in the same way that Netflix is. It just operates a little differently. So from a business perspective, there's some wisdom in considering what your opportunities are at the end of the road. Also from a story perspective, one of the things that we should have seen coming, but have been frankly kind of surprised by, is just the amount of content that we have created for the Heartmender is Herculean. Like trying to rewrite the scripts. There are 6 episodes in this limited series. Doing a script rewrite, that's 300 pages of scripts. That is
every time we get a pass, I'm just like, oh no, there's new scripts in my inbox. So
when you're considering a 104-page feature, which is that's the sweet spot that we like to see our feature scripts. Okay. If you're looking at a 104-page feature, you can read that in an hour and a half if you're a normal speed reader. With the Heartmender, it takes me an entire day, and even then I can't get through all of it. And when you're juggling a slate of projects, how do you find the time to commit to a full sit down read, and not get brain dead from reading that much content over and over again with every, oh, we went through and tweaked this character, or we tweaked this storyline at the end of this episode and that episode, it's just so much content. It's a lot to juggle, and a feature is a lot easier to get to a good spot than a series is. And then there's also the
so what you're saying is we might die on the Heartmender Hill with our limited series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also okay, so Adam mentioned, like, if we had turned the Heartmender into a feature, we would lose a lot of the story. It's true, but it's also deceptive, because if you look at a story, and this is a trick or a trap that a lot of people fall into, if you look at a story and say, oh my gosh, okay, let's just count the pages. There's 239 pages in this book. All right, we have a 300-page script. All right, that's pretty good match. But how much of this book cannot be turned into a film? Every time the characters have an internal monologue, if they're thinking about something or if they're remembering something, how do you put that on the screen? You can't just have a 5-minute shot of the main character staring off, giving a 1,000-yard stare, because what's she thinking about? What's going on?
I mean,
you
could theoretically do that.
Yeah.
Right?
The novel author can have a character do something and then flash back in the character's memory to a thing 5 years earlier. And, you can do this flashback, not lose track of the story. In a film, you can't do that. Every time you do a flashback, you just press pause on the narrative arc of the story and then do like 10 minutes of exposition in your flashback and then get back to actually something happening.
I feel like we need to do a diversion here and do a flashback to Andrew and I's pet peeve of flashbacks, right?
Oh man, we're gonna flashback to the flashback conversation.
Like Andrew and I
we hate flashbacks.
One of our story pet peeves, we don't like flashbacks, and we really don't like it when a movie starts with the end of the movie. But now you're probably gonna see a movie from us that does that, and you're gonna call us out.
No, you will not see a movie from us that does that.
Yeah, you probably won't ever see that.
The thing with flashbacks by definition are exposition. They never move the story forward, right? Mm-hmm. Because the story only happens in the present. Characters only grow in the present. Flashbacks can give you information about the characters, but it's information and it's exposition. I'm not saying that's always bad. Sometimes you can have flashbacks that are impactful for the story, but generally a flashback will pause the plot until you're back in the present, and then the story can continue. So one of the rules that we like to do is minimize exposition, and flashbacks are pure exposition. Try to get rid of them. Is there a way that you can put that information into the present of the story? Then it becomes a much more engaging narrative. Mm-hmm. One of our projects we had when we first got the script, like Adam said, it started with the end. We literally saw in the third act, it's not the lost point, it's the resolution point when the character triumphs and it's our Project Endurance. It started with the main guy at the starting line of the Boston Marathon, which is midpoint or midway through Act 3 in the present script. It steals all of the tension out of the story because you know where you're going. Mm-hmm. And just like music, storytelling is all about tension and release, and you want to build tension and then you want to release it in a very specific way, and you kind of want to keep that ebb and flow going so that people stay engaged. And as we were reviewing the script, Adam and I had this realization, okay, not only do we not like starting with the end of the movie, but I have a feeling that these flashbacks, about every 10 pages or so, there was a flashback to the Boston Marathon as Cedric journeys through the movie. I have a feeling that every flashback is hiding a narrative problem. because the movie feels disjointed, and I can't put my finger on why, but it feels disjointed. What happens if we pull all these flashbacks out? And we did. We actually called the writer and said, all right, for the next pass, literally cut all of the flashbacks.
Yeah, just get rid of all of them.
And move them to the end of maybe not cut them. That's not the right word, but basically cut them out of the script where they are, move them to Act 3 where they should be, because now it's in a linear fashion, right? It's not it's not non-linear, it's in linear fashion. And when we did that, we were like, oh crap, the narrative is all over the place. There is no dramatic arc in the story anymore. So it really revealed a lot of problems. We had to go back and redefine where the inciting incident was, how Act 1 happened, how Act 2, that break into 2 moment, which is so important, where that was in the script, how you get to the midpoint. It like completely changed the storyline. So yeah, long story short, we don't like flashbacks.
Well,
I mean, I don't always blame you. I definitely have written some in the past, and hearing you expound upon it, I think back and I'm like, yep, I can totally see that's exactly like what I was doing there.
that's awesome.
Because obviously with your company, you're developing multiple stories at the same time. Like, what advice do you have to other producers out there about devoting time to multiple projects and making sure you're able to keep moving them all forward, and it's not like my full attention's on this and this other project that is like drowning over here?
Well, I guess I would say focus on multiple at the same time. I think that's how you diversify risk. The film industry is super risky. Everybody knows it. And I think if you're focusing all of your attention on one, then you're risking so much, because as Andrew and I have found, one project will all of a sudden, like, we'll have one conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden that project is like, it's like the dark horse. We keep saying like, oh, this project's like the dark horse project. It's just showed up out of nowhere. It was like dormant for a year almost. The script is great, and all of a sudden it's just taken off, and the phone's ringing off the hook. Whereas if you only have one, there's so much time between when you'll hit mile markers of progress. Say you need to get a new script draft written, a screenwriter might, that might take a month, to work on that script, and now you're not able to move the needle while you're waiting for the script. Whereas Andrew and I, one project will have a script rewrite going on. Like Heartmender is being rewritten right now, like a polish pass right now. Our project Endurance, we just did a trip to Atlanta, and so while our screenwriter's working on one thing, we're traveling and we're meeting other people on another project. So yes, it is a bit to manage, and it does slow some of the projects down sometimes, because we are working on multiple at the same time. But I think ultimately it's been a very wise thing that I would recommend to other people. Stuff just takes time, and by having multiple going forward, it's just a smart, balanced producer thing to do.
Yeah, and I'll also, before Adam and I started Noble, we asked a lot of people for advice about partnering together and starting a company. And I was surprised at how many people were very critical of a partnership. And, companies should be run by one person. It should not be a 2-person thing. There's just going to be conflict. You guys are going to hate each other. And, I think starting a company is like starting a marriage. Yeah. It's like, it might not always be smooth sailing. And there have definitely been times that Adam and I don't see eye to eye on stuff. But if you're committed to the company and to the common goal, and very important to Adam and I, we care about people, and that includes the two of us. Like, I care about our friendship a heck of a lot more than I care about our company. And if you just keep your priorities right, a partnership is so valuable. in so many areas. Number one, we have gone a heck of a lot farther together than either of us could have gone alone. Number two, when you're juggling a slate of projects, Adam is, spearheading two of our projects. I'm spearheading two of our projects, and we have some others that are kind of, being spearheaded by both of us, depending on how big the project is. But dividing our efforts has really helped us keep our sanity, and it,
Yeah.
it helps our projects continue to move forward, so that, oh my gosh, Hartman, there's this huge monstrosity that's gobbling up all of our time right now. Well, it's gobbling up all of my time, but Adam's got plenty of time to work on his project. And now Endurance, which is Adam's one of Adam's projects that he's spearheading, that one could keep going while I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to solve this script problem, and like I got to create this
Yes.
stupid pitch deck, all of this stuff that's taking up my time. And Adam's
Yeah.
having phone calls for his other project. He doesn't have to worry about that. It's
Yeah.
a really smart decision to partner with somebody that you're compatible with on a personality level, and you guys are going for the same goal, and then you can split the workload. Yeah, we found that to be a big part of what makes our company run smoothly.
It's kind of getting back to what we started with, Andrew. We went to a conference, pounding business cards like crazy, and realized that we had met each other and we were kind of ignoring each other. Not ignoring each other, but we like wasted a couple of years like kind of hanging out where we could have just been working on stuff.
Yeah.
That's my advice to just anybody listening to this. Maybe you already know the person that you need to be working with, and it's okay if you're not working with X person that you really want to be. You could start developing projects today with a buddy, with a friend that you already know.
For
And
sure.
get good people around you. Like our board is
Get
so
a good.
good. You have to surround yourself with people who know more than you do, from multiple different areas, from business areas, from like, emotional intelligence, people that really understand how people work. Like it's really good to just surround yourself with all of those people.
Yeah, like our board's got us doing strength finders tests recently, and they're like lining up our strengths, and like we're going, what's going on? Like that's my strength. Wait, no, Andrew's that way, I'm this way. And there other people are bringing clarity to our company with we call it our governance board. It's not an official board that can necessarily tell us like we have to do something, but they're advisors that we meet with once a month, and we talk for an hour, and we do follow-up meetings with them, and they're just straight up speaking into us. One of the guys has owned, I don't know, like 7 or 9 businesses, understands business and how that works. Our board chair, Dana, I mean, she's a part of a foundation organization called Wedgwood Circle that's was started for the creative industry, and so she brings a wealth of knowledge and contacts there. So that is really good advice that Andrew brought up. Surround yourself with good people that know more than you.
Yeah, it's not about it's not about building our own kingdom. It's about how do we build God's kingdom, and how do we respect and protect our relationships with other people? Who cares? To some extent, who cares about the stories that people watch on the screen? The real impact of what we're doing, and if we're going to see real impact on people's lives, it's going to be the people that we work with. So let's really take care of the people that we work with.
No, that's really good. And honestly, I feel like a lot of that touched on the last question I had, which was just what was one piece of advice you would give to somebody just getting started as a producer?
Find a friend, phone a friend. Feel like I'm on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something.
Yeah, and understand why movies work. Go watch tons of movies, especially old movies. Understand why they work, how they work. It's, movies are art, but there's a lot of science involved, even down to the story level. the end of the day, movies are about manipulating people's emotions. And that's a very like it's not woo-woo spooky, there's a very definite science to that.
Yeah.
And there's a pattern. It's that tension and release. If you understand how that works, you'll produce good
There's like
movies.
somebody famous that said it's not when the actor cries, it's when the audience cries that matters.
Yeah.
Somebody
I've heard
important
that.
said that somewhere.
I was gonna say, I like that. I've never heard it before, but that's good. Alrighty. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up the call here, but thank you both very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Micah. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
really appreciate it, man. Thanks for all your work that you're doing with this podcast. And you've been out producing some movies too, working hard, and it's been fun watching where you're headed.
And on that note, we are going to wrap up this episode of the Producer Podcast. Until next time, make sure to subscribe to the Producer Podcast, and thanks for listening.